Mario Odyssey is the most free and open-world Mario game we've had yet. The amount of movement options is staggering, and with the amazing scenery and story, it's an all-around fantastic game. But it's not very difficult. There are a few difficult moons like volleyball and maybe some dark side moons, but really, even on my casual playthrough, it would take 2 or 3 tries at most. So I wanted to make it a little more challenging. It's always amazed me how athletic Mario is for a pasta-loving Italian with a dad bod. So what if we play into the role a little bit? What if Mario was a professional gymnast? Gymnasts can flip, somersault, and jump on poles. But when have you ever seen them walk around? So to translate this into a challenge, what if we can only crouch? This allows us to flip, roll, and climb poles, and it also limits us because we can't walk and instead waddle really slowly. It also has a lot of limitations that I'll mention later. For this challenge, the only rule is that I must have either the ZL or ZR button held down at all times. But this has already been done before. Of course you can get the 124 moons from random ones lying around, but can you get 500 moons and beat Darker Side? Like any Mario Odyssey challenge, we start in Cap Kingdom. Learning how to move was a little rough. Rolling is one of our best ways to move fast, but it can be very janky to control. If you start rolling down a hill or go off any edge, you'll be locked into the roll and will most likely die or just lose a lot of progress. I made it to Cappy, and now we actually have a good way to move. With Cappy, we can backflip, Cappy bounce, and then dive. The nice part of this challenge is that once you're in the air, nothing is changed by holding down the crouch button, so it opens up a lot of options. I was again reminded of how annoying it is to cancel a roll, as you can't just release the crouch button. You either have to bonk or slowly wait for your momentum to run out. The other really annoying thing to do is throw Cappy. While you're crouching, if you press Y, Mario will start to roll instead of throwing Cappy. Once we got into Top Hat Tower, it was a breeze. The whole area is designed around frogs and captures aren't affected by crouching. Topper is the boss at the end of Cap Kingdom and is normally a massive pushover. But I messed up and rolled into him instead of throwing my cap like I wanted to, and this made the fight a lot closer than it should have been. Next up is Cascade Kingdom, and this is where I found my first major problem: 2D areas. Since I'm permanently crouching, if I ever try to enter a 2D area, I immediately exit it. While it doesn't matter here as I can capture the dino and use the bounce pad to get up to the boss, that could be a very big problem later. Madame Brood was an easy fight and all I had to do was get 5 moons, 3 of which came from a multi-moon. But since I'm trying to get 500 moons, I figured a couple more couldn't hurt. After restoring the Odyssey, it was time to face sand, and there's a big problem here. The first story moon is located on top of this tower, but to get up there, I need to go into this 2D section, which I can't do. This means that I can't do any of the sand story, and this locks a ton of moons behind it. Several moons are unlocked normally after killing the boss. There's also these gray moon rocks that will unlock tons of new moons, but can only be activated if you brought Peace to the Kingdom, which clearly I haven't. Even if I clipped into the inverted pyramid, it wouldn't matter as there are even more 2D sections inside of there. While there are enough moons to leave the kingdom, not being able to do this story locks us off from being able to do a lot of moons. Another interesting thing that I noticed is that when you buy the costume and go to the costume room, they don't allow you to get the moon. You have to start dancing, and to do that you have to be standing up, not crouching. We can gloss over most of Lake Kingdom as crouching doesn't do anything in water. But I do want to talk about the boss. We had to fight Rango, and actually backflips are kind of perfect. Rango is pretty tall, so to land on his head, you're intended to use these red flowers. But I instead just backflipped, Cappy bounced, and then dove onto his head. It wasn't too hard, although running away gave me a scare every time. I would constantly roll or long jump into the arena wall and he'd get super close to me. Timer Challenge 2 was a little tight as I had to constantly bonk or pull up on a ledge to get to the top, but I managed to clear it after a couple of tries. Wooded also wasn't that bad. A lot of the level progression deals with tanks and other captures, and the bosses were really easy. Spewer was as simple as backflipping and diving onto his head, and Torque Drift is done with an upgrade. One interesting thing I found is the rocket flowers. I figured that they would just take Mario out of crouching mode, but if you're rolling, it'll give you a weird sped up roll that sucks, cause it can't go up hills. So I had to make sure I wasn't rolling to get up this part. The next kingdom we have to tackle is Cloud Kingdom, and unlike every other boss in the game, this one was actually hard. Bowser's cap isn't technically a capture, and therefore we can still crouch in it. This means that we waddle forward extremely slowly and have to dodge the fire shockwaves and giant boulders he throws at us with backflips and long jumps alone. My general strategy was to backflip over the false caps and try and rely on Cappy's homing abilities to get to the right one. I would then backflip and hold forward to be able to start long jumping. I would jump over the flames, avoid the boulders, and smack Bowser in the face. Even though we beat Bowser, he doesn't care and maroons us in the Lost Kingdom. This could have been scary with Klepto who steals Cappy, but you can just sneak around the activation zone and take him out before he does that. The Mecha Wiggler in Metro was pretty easy, as you're in a tank the whole time. But the New Donk City Hall interior before that was pretty awful. You have to climb pipes to get up, and since we're crouching, we slide down the poles. If you hold up and shake, you can slowly counteract that, but even so, when you jump to a new pipe, you still immediately start to slide down. I went around collecting 4 musicians and then beat up some piranha plants before I made the worst decision of my life, saying yes to Mayor Pauline. A traditional festival is a completely 2D section that's also completely impossible. I wasn't really thinking when I said yes, and quickly came to realize that I was soft-locked. I don't have enough moons to leave the kingdom, and there's no way to cancel it. There's a painting I can go through, but when I came back to Metro, I was still in the festival mode. There's no way around it. I didn't back up my save because I'm an idiot, so I'm gonna make you a deal. I don't want to restart this challenge, so I'm gonna go through Metro, get the required moons to leave, and never come back. After getting World Peace, it unlocks a lot of extra moons that I don't want to take advantage of. And I'll get 503 moons before going to Darker Side to make up for it. As I got to Snow Kingdom, I decided to revamp my strategy. After beating the game, you unlock moon rocks, and with them, I'd be able to more efficiently travel around and pick up moons as there are more moons per area. So if I instead just complete the story moon so I have access to that and get the bare minimum elsewhere, then it'll be more efficient. So I flew through the 4 doors and the race, getting an easy first place. Seaside was relatively similar to Snow, and I cruised right through it. Most of the moons are about exploration and captures, and then the final fight is in a capture. Luncheon was a bit more difficult though. It has a ton of platforming all throughout the level, and if you mess up, you get punished quite a lot. In this shards area, I died pretty much every shard because I would accidentally touch the lava once and couldn't recover. But all in all, it wasn't awful as you used the Podoboos for a lot of the level, including the final boss fight. Ruin was definitely the most difficult boss fight in the entire run. Being crouched makes avoiding the lasers quite a bit more difficult, but it mostly makes removing the golden gate things on the head of the dragon super annoying. I constantly use Cappy's homing, which also makes me either roll off the head or bonk if I'm on or close to the ground. The timer on the dragon was so tight that I had to use several cycles because I just couldn't do it fast enough. It took a little too many tries, but I eventually got the moon and headed to Bowser's Kingdom. I had a bit of trouble with the ogres. I wasn't quite fast enough to climb up them in one go, but I managed to get on their wooden block in one go and then jump and kill them on the next. Topper was a little rough, and I even died once because I got overwhelmed by the amount of hats. But on my next attempt, I flew through both bosses and then destroyed Robo Brood. It might have been kind of difficult, except the intended strat is to use a Pokio. The final Bowser fight is actually kind of difficult in this challenge. I used the same strats as last time of backflipping and long jumping to Bowser, but this time he swings his tail at you, and backflipping takes so long. He then spews fire at you, which I had to backflip over to avoid. In the third phase of his attack, he threw out so many purple hats that Cappy got confused and couldn't home in on the right one. So I had to try like 5 times to finally get it and finish him off. Thankfully, Bowser isn't able to crouch, and I can finish the main story easily. But the challenge isn't over yet. I now have to revisit each of the kingdoms and gather 503 moons before beating Darker Side. Since I collected over 300 more moons, I'll just cover the interesting ones. First up is this orange and blue sub-area in Cap Kingdom. I died here like 5 times. Since I'm constantly long jumping and backflipping, I bonked a lot. And since the platforms move in and out, if you bonk, then you're dead. I would also sometimes dive, and when you dive, you automatically start a roll, which then kills you. The Triceratops head in Cascade Kingdom has a moon on the top, which I fell off of so many times. I tried to wait until the last second to throw and home in Cappy, but I would often also roll off and have to try again. The swinging sub area in Cascade also sucked. You basically can't ever dive without dying, and activating these clouds is so annoying. There's a 2D section in Cascade which is actually doable for once. You enter from the side, which means you don't immediately crouch back in. And even though it's doable, it's still very annoying. You're still crouched, which means you can't move left or right, and instead have to jump that way. Jumps have to be much more precise, and it means you never have any momentum. But I was able to get both of the moons. In Wooded Kingdom, there was this nut under a ledge that you first had to jump down and break, then climb back up without warping, which resets the nut, to jump back down and dive into. In Snow Kingdom, there was a timer challenge with poles. This meant I was constantly slipping, and it took me way too many tries. There's also the flower poison room. You don't have Cappy and have to traverse long, winding paths of flowers over poison. I can't waddle fast enough, and rolling is way too fast and inaccurate, so the whole way I was long jumping. You can hold back on a long jump to not go very far, so I had to do that as well as make very sharp turns to make it through. At the end, I was even long jumping between platforms to not get hit by bonsai bills. In the Icicle Cavern, there's a moon that requires you to stack 10 Goombas. This doesn't seem hard, but if one dies, you're screwed, and they're so killable. I tried so hard to preserve them, but had to reset so many times because they just kept dying. There was another 2D section that I was able to do in Luncheon, which is pretty cool, but I can't say the same for Bowser's Kingdom. After paying for the samurai costume, I realized that it was a lost cause. I clapped some Koopas in Bowser's and Moon Kingdom before finally getting the 503 moons required to go to Darker Side. Now it's time for the final challenge. It starts with an optional boss that I decided to kill anyway because it's really easy and it's a free life up part. Then I long jumped between speeding platforms and did some lava parkour. There's a lot of capture-based movement in Darker Side, which made a lot of sections pretty easy, like this one with the uproot and with Yoshi. I answered one final questionnaire with the Sphinx, and then had the hardest part of the whole level. You have to parkour upwards under a very strict time limit. I died several times, requiring me to do the entire level all over until I got this. It felt incredible. And now we're at Glidon. In the coming section, you have to parkour with forks over lava, ride an auto-scroller platform, parkour with Pokios, and then do a 2D section that's impossible. But thankfully, we're not soft-locked here. If you take Glidon and basically super boost him off the first tornado, you can fly him all the way past the 2D section and to the final thank you message. All that was left was to capture the frog, climb the outside of the tower, and slowly trudge up the pole before finally reaching a long journey's end. If you enjoyed the video, then please like and subscribe, and watch some of my other videos if you have the time. If you have any challenge ideas, then leave them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to check them out. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.